Hi guys, today we're doing day 1 block 2 notes. It's called the building blocks of geometry. It's going to kind of jump us off into the rest of our geometry unit. So it's a lot of vocab today and kind of labeling things and notation, which means like how we write things. So we're going to start by talking through some of the vocabulary here, identifying lines and parts of lines. I'm going to use the highlight tool. So if you want to follow along on Cami, if you click markup, and then the box highlighter works pretty well. So I want to show you guys, point out some stuff here. We'll start by talking about a point. So a point is a position in a plane or in space that has no dimensions. The points are named. You can either call them points A, B, and C, or individually like point A, point B, and point C. We don't really have symbols for points, so you have to write the word point to tell us that that's what you're talking about. And then obviously examples on the right. A line is a set of points that extends infinitely, so it goes on forever. Okay, that's why we have the arrows in both directions. If you're naming a line, you use 2 points on the line and you draw an actual line above those 2 points. Does not matter the order. So AB, BA can both name this line here. And they don't have to be next to each other. We'll see examples in a moment. Next is a line segment. So this is just a finite portion of a line, meaning not infinite. So it's basically one piece, right? We're familiar with line segments. And it has 2 endpoints. If you're naming a line segment, same idea. You take 2 points on that line segment, typically the endpoints. You write the letters next to each other and you draw a little line segment above them. That means you don't have to write the words line segment every time. Yeah, it must be named by its 2 endpoints. And then lastly, we have a ray. A ray is a portion of a line that extends from one endpoint, meaning a dot, infinitely in one direction. So for example, this ray is named AB, and you have the little ray above it. Okay, the endpoint is written first. So you always have to start from the endpoint. There's only one way to name a ray, or one first letter, and then any other point can be used. Okay, so let's look at some examples with this vocabulary. So we want to name each point, line, line segment, or ray. So I'm going to go back to the drawing tool so I can write. So for number 1, we're just naming this, and I see there's an endpoint and then an arrow, so this is a ray. I have to start with the endpoint, and then the only other letter is XY, and then I draw a little ray above it. That's it, ray XY. Number 2, this is a line segment because there are 2 endpoints, so you could call this DE or ED. Order does not matter for that, but what does matter is the line segment symbol above it. Okay, that's very, very important. Number 3, these are a couple of points, so I'm going to call them points S and T. And we'll do one more together here. Number 4, arrows on both ends means this is a line. I can call it line WX, the line above it, or XW, either way. Okay, try the rest on your own and then you'll be able to check your answers here. All right, here are my answers for those remaining problems. Pretty straightforward here. The only ones, just double check the ray because there really is only one way to label these rays. And I don't know if you've noticed, but it doesn't matter which way the arrow's pointing. We always draw it towards the right when we draw it above the letters. Okay, so part 2 here, we're going to draw and label each of the following. So AB, the line above it, means line AB. Doesn't matter the direction. Make sure you have the arrows. Okay, that matters here. And then points A and B should be on that line. Points C and D, doesn't particularly matter where you put them. Just make sure you label them with the letters. Here is a line segment. So the end points of the line segment You can flip the order if you want, doesn't matter. Points L, M, and N. Pretty easy. A ray, MN. So this one, the end point has to be point M, and then N is somewhere else on the ray. And lastly, line JK. I'm going to switch my letters here, put K and then J. It does not matter. Okay. All right, next section. So we have a figure here we're going to use to answer some questions. So we want to name 4 points on this figure. Pretty easy. We're going to call them points O, L, M, and N, all the dots that we see here. Name 2 line segments. Okay. One thing I will point out, sorry, that this got cut off. There should be an arrow here on that end. But anyway, 2 line segments. So we need 2 endpoints. So there's a lot of different answers here. One of the line segments I thought of was LM, right there. Another one, NM. You could switch the order of letters. You could write LN. Lots of things you could do. Name 3 rays. So one array that sticks out right away, MO. Remember, start with the endpoint. Another one, ML here. So notice, like, I have LM as a line segment, but I also have it as a ray, just switched letters. The symbol on top is what matters. That's what tells you the difference between them. So you have to have the right symbol on top of the letters. Another ray I can name, NL. Again, it's the symbol that helps me more than the letters. The letters just tell me where to look. And then we're naming the line 3 ways. So that's this line. Make sure you add that arrow here. So one way I can name it, LM. Again, I've had this pair of letters 3 times, but my symbol changes to show, okay, I'm talking about the line now. I can also call it LN. Or let's say ML, NL, MN, NM. Lots of things you could say. Okay. All right, let's talk about congruent. So it says name a pair of congruent segments. Oops, sorry. Congruent means equal or exactly the same. And the symbol we use is an equal sign with a little curly guy on top. That means congruent. And that means everything about them is exactly the same. We usually think of it like equal. So if we want to name a pair of congruent segments, we're looking for the segments that have the same measure. So I notice in this picture, RQ is 5, VT is 5. So I'm going to write segment RQ is congruent to segment VT. Pair of congruent angles. Let's talk about how we name angles. So we're going to practice writing them with 3 letters. We'll talk about some other ways to name them as well. So if I want to name an angle, we write 3 letters down and the vertex of the angle is in the middle. Okay, so let's say I have these 2 100-degree angles here. So the vertex of this first angle is Q. So when I name it, I'm going to name it RQP. That means start at R, go to Q, and then turn and go to P. So there's my angle. That guy is congruent to angle VTS. The vertex is in the middle when you put the 3 letters in. Okay, we'll see why that matters as we get into some more problems. And then we'll name the congruent triangles. So when we name a triangle, notice I had the angle symbol here. I'm going to have a triangle symbol before I name the triangle. 3 letters make up this first triangle, RQP. Again, it's the same letters, but the symbols are what tells me what I'm actually talking about. It's congruent to triangle VTS. Okay. And then last thing here, I have 4 main types of angles we'll look at. So right angle, we know that measures 90 degrees. An acute angle, the vocab here acute, means that it's less than 90 degrees. Obtuse means that it's greater than 90 degrees. And then our straight angle is equal to 180 degrees. Okay, so a lot of vocab for this lesson here, and then you guys will be able to practice some of this stuff.